And now we're going to walk you through a little bit of creating a new project in more detail and sort of getting VIAP set up to work with the type of analysis that you might want to do in VIAP. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to do a file new project here. And I'm not going to save this quick demo that Craig did. And anytime that you do a new project, whether you're launching VIAP or you go new project from the file menu, on the little splash screen, VIAP asks you a couple different choices here. The first is the project type. The choices of Standard, Building America, and the California Utility Cost Test project type. And you can hover over them to get some description on them. Generally speaking, if you're in the Building America, the Department of Energy Building America program, and you select this, there'll be some tailoring of the interface in terms of what kind of like X and Y axis metrics you might see, and some things to help do Building America analysis. Likewise, if you're in the state of California and interested in their utility cost test metrics, which are sort of utility effectiveness tests for incentive programs, you could choose that. But generally speaking, the vast majority of people, of our VIAP users, are just going to pick Standard there. And in the help file, which I'll get to in a little bit, there's complete description on what changes in the interface between these different project types. But if you don't know, the safest thing is to use Standard. The interface is completely flexible in that situation. And then you also have the choice on application type, either new construction or retrofit. Again, there'll be some changes to the interface to facilitate analysis of either of these application types. So for the moment, I'm going to stick with new construction. We're going to go through the interface in the context of new construction first, and then later we'll come back and show some of the differences in retrofit analysis mode. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Before we get to the input screens in more detail, just in terms of getting VIAP set up, one of the first things you'll need to do is link VIAP to one of the third-party simulation engines. And you can do this by going to the Tools and then Settings screen. And in here is a tab called Simulation Engines. And you'll have to go to the Energy Plus or Go2 websites, and they're links from the VIAP website. Where you install the VIAP setup files, they'll have links directly to these two websites. You would need to download the software. For Energy Plus, there's an install. For Go2, it's a matter of just unzipping the zip file. And then once you have those simulation engines installed, and you don't need both, we generally recommend Energy Plus. It is a more capable and we tend to say more accurate simulation engine, but it is slower than Go2. Each simulation takes about 2 or 3 minutes for Energy Plus, whereas it's about 5 seconds for Go2. But you can then point to these directories where you have them installed so that within the single interface of VIAP, you can actually, on a building-by-building basis, you can choose which simulation you might want to run. And then if you do have multiple specified, you can pick which one you want to use by default for a new project. And so this is something you'll have to do in order to run simulations and get any type of energy result out of VIAP. If you try to run VIAP and you haven't set this up, VIAP will tell you you have to come here and set this up. The other thing to point out too is that if you've got a multiple processor machine, VIAP can run simulations in parallel. So if you're running in optimization mode where you might run a couple thousand simulations, you can make use of multiple processors locally on your machine. That can significantly speed up the simulations that you're running. And VIAP will default to sort of 1 minus however many processors you have. So I'm going to stick with 3. And then the last thing I'll mention is, and Craig alluded to it before, is we do ship with some fairly comprehensive documentation on the interface itself under the Help menu here. If you click on VIAP Help, there is a pretty large help file with documentation covering, so for example, under projects, here's the project type that I mentioned with the Standard, the Building America, and the California Utility Cost Tests project types. You can get more information on what those are doing, inputs, running VIAP, outputs, reports, etc. So there's quite a lot of information here. It's also available on the website. In terms of, there are assumptions that BAPT uses trying to define a typical residence for the user. Some of this you can, or most of this you can override as a user, but there are a bunch of defaults in BAPT in terms of, let's say, miscellaneous plug loads of TVs and radios and all that sort of thing, and how much hot water usage you have, et cetera. And so a lot of that is described in what we call the Building America House Simulation Protocols. So you can click on this. This is a standalone PDF that will show you where BAPT draws some of the standard occupancy assumptions that it uses in the program. And if you want to change those in the interface, you can choose to do that. There are also, as you'll see when you move your mouse around in BAPT, there's often tooltips available to you that show up, as well as the bottom of the screen when you're over any given element. There's often some information that shows down there as well. And lastly, there are often a lot of places where you can right-click on different controls and get menus and options. So we encourage you to right-click often and find some of those more hidden features to BAPT. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Craig, and he's going to talk about the geometry screen in more detail.